The Batavia, a magnificent ship of the Dutch East India Company, embarked on its maiden voyage in 1629. This ship was not just any vessel, it was a symbol of Dutch maritime prowess and ambition. The Dutch East India Company, known as the Vossee, was one of the most powerful trading entities of its time, and the Batavia was one of its crown jewels. Bound for the Spice Islands of the East Indies, it carried a treasure trove of silver, a fortune that would be used to purchase precious spices and other exotic goods. These spices were highly coveted in Europe, where they were worth their weight in gold. The Batavia's cargo was not just valuable, it was essential for the VOC's trading operations. Alongside the silver, the ship was laden with exotic goods, textiles, and other valuable commodities. The Batavia was a floating treasure chest, a beacon of wealth and opportunity. But it wasn't just goods that the ship carried. It also bore the hopes and dreams of over 300 souls. Among them were merchants, soldiers, and families seeking new beginnings. These individuals were drawn by the promise of prosperity and adventure in the distant lands of the East Indies. For many, this voyage represented a chance to escape the hardships of Europe and start anew in a land of opportunity. Little did they know fate had a sinister plan in store. The journey that began with such hope and promise would soon descend into chaos and tragedy. The vast ocean, with its unpredictable nature, held many dangers, and the Batavia was about to encounter them. The journey began smoothly, the ship gliding across tranquil waters under a hopeful sky. The crew and passengers settled into the routine of life at sea, their spirits buoyed by the fair weather and the steady progress they were making. But as weeks turned into months, the relentless sun and cramped conditions began to wear on the passengers. The heat was oppressive, and the lack of space made tempers flare. The initial excitement of the voyage gave way to fatigue and frustration. Unbeknownst to them, a darkness was brewing in the heart of one man, a man whose ambitions and desires would soon lead to unimaginable horror. This man was not content with the promise of wealth and adventure. He sought power and control. This man, Jeronimus Cornelisz, the ship's under-merchant, began to plot a mutiny. Cornelisz was a charismatic but deeply troubled individual whose charm masked a sinister nature. He saw the Batavia's voyage as an opportunity to seize control of the ship and its riches. Jeronimus Cornelisz, the ship's under-merchant, a charismatic but deeply troubled individual, began to plot a mutiny. He was a man of contradictions, capable of inspiring loyalty and fear in equal measure. His troubled past and ambitious nature made him a dangerous figure. He saw an opportunity to seize control of the ship and its riches. The Batavia's cargo was a tempting prize, and Cornelisz was willing to do whatever it took to claim it. He began to sow seeds of discontent among the crew, whispering promises of wealth and power. Whispering promises of wealth and power, he gathered a band of disgruntled sailors and soldiers, their loyalty swayed by greed and discontent. These men, disillusioned with their lot, were easily drawn into Cornelisz's web of deceit and ambition. Their loyalty swayed by greed and discontent. These men became willing accomplices in Cornelisz's plot. The atmosphere on the Batavia grew tense as whispers of mutiny spread through the ship. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change the course of the voyage. As the Batavia neared the coast of Western Australia, Cornelisz's plan was set in motion. The ship's proximity to land provided the perfect opportunity for him to strike. The crew, unaware of the impending danger, continued their duties, oblivious to the storm that was about to break. The ship, caught in a violent storm, ran aground on a treacherous reef. The once calm and hopeful journey turned into a nightmare as the Batavia was battered by the relentless waves. The crew and passengers were thrown into chaos, their dreams of a new beginning shattered. It was a moment of terror and confusion, but for Cornelisz, it was the chance he had been waiting for. Amidst the wreckage and despair, he saw an opportunity to seize control. The stage was set for a brutal and bloody chapter in the Batavia's history, one that would be remembered for centuries to come. The roar of the crashing waves filled the air, a deafening symphony of nature's raw power. The sea, once a serene expanse, had transformed into a monstrous force, its waves rising like walls of water, crashing down with relentless fury. The Batavia, a sturdy vessel built to withstand the ocean's might, was no match for the jagged teeth of Morning Reef. The ship's hull groaned and splintered as it was violently thrust upon the rocks, the sound of wood cracking and metal twisting echoing through the storm. Panic seized the passengers and crew. Shouts of fear and confusion filled the air as people scrambled to find safety. The once orderly deck was now a scene of chaos, with individuals clinging to anything they could find, their faces etched with terror. The once proud ship, its hull breached and its masts broken, was now a mangled wreck being pounded mercilessly by the unforgiving sea. The Batavia, which had carried dreams and hopes across the ocean, was reduced to a shattered remnant of its former glory. Waves continued to batter the wreck, each one a reminder of the sea's unyielding power. The ship's remains were tossed about like a toy, the relentless assault of the ocean showing no signs of abating. In the midst of the chaos, Cornelisz saw his opportunity. Amidst the confusion and fear, he moved with a calculated calm, his eyes scanning the scene for a way to turn the disaster to his advantage. He quickly established himself as a leader, organizing the evacuation of the survivors onto nearby islands. His authoritative voice cut through the panic, directing people to the lifeboats, and ensuring that as many as possible made it to the relative safety of the islands. Unknown to the others, his intentions were far from noble. Behind his calm demeanor and seemingly helpful actions, Cornelisz harbored a dark plan. He had lured them to this desolate place to carry out his sinister scheme. The islands, barren and unforgiving, offered little respite. The landscape was harsh and unwelcoming, with rocky shores and sparse vegetation. It was a place where survival would be a constant struggle. The islands, barren and unforgiving, offered little respite. The landscape was harsh and unwelcoming, with rocky shores and sparse vegetation. It was a place where survival would be a constant struggle. The survivors, already exhausted and traumatized, faced an uphill battle against the elements. Food and water were scarce, and the scorching sun beat down relentlessly. The survivors, many of whom were already weakened by the ordeal at sea, found themselves in a dire situation. The sun's unrelenting heat sapped their strength, and the lack of fresh water and food added to their misery. Fear and despair began to grip the survivors as they realized the true extent of their predicament. The initial relief of having escaped the sinking ship was quickly replaced by the harsh reality of their new environment. They were stranded, with no immediate hope of rescue. They were stranded at the edge of the world, miles from any known shipping routes. The vast, empty ocean stretched out before them, a daunting reminder of their isolation. The horizon offered no sign of rescue, only the endless expanse of water. Cornelisz, surrounded by his loyal followers, consolidated his power. He used the chaos and fear to his advantage, positioning himself as the only hope for survival. His followers, desperate and afraid, clung to his promises of safety and order. He established a brutal regime, using fear and intimidation to control the desperate survivors. Those who dared to oppose him were quickly silenced, their fates serving as a grim warning to others. Cornelisz ruled with an iron fist, his authority unchallenged. The once hopeful voyage had descended into a nightmare. The dream of a new life in a distant land was now a distant memory, replaced by the harsh reality of their current situation. The survivors, once filled with hope and anticipation, now faced a grim struggle for survival under the oppressive rule of Cornelisz. With the captain and loyal officers conveniently stranded on a separate island, Cornelisz revealed his true nature. The veneer of civility was stripped away, revealing a ruthless tyrant driven by paranoia and a lust for power. The mutiny had begun. Those who dared to question his authority were swiftly and brutally silenced. Women were forced into sexual slavery, their cries for help lost on the wind. A reign of terror was unleashed. The idyllic islands transformed into a hunting ground where human life held little value. Cornelisz, fueled by a dangerous cocktail of delusion and megalomania, declared himself the new leader. He envisioned creating his own twisted utopia on these remote islands, a kingdom built on violence and subjugation. The survivors were now his pawns, their lives forfeit to his twisted desires. The once ordered world of the Batavia had been turned upside down. The bonds of loyalty and trust were shattered, replaced by fear, suspicion, and the ever-present threat of violence. The shipwreck, once a symbol of hope and adventure, had become a crucible of human darkness. The white coral sands, once pristine and beautiful, became stained with the blood of the innocent. These sands, which had once been a symbol of untouched beauty and tranquility, now bore the gruesome marks of a horrific massacre. The contrast between the pure white of the coral and the deep red of the blood was a stark reminder of the violence that had shattered this paradise. Cornelisz, driven by paranoia and a desire to eliminate any threat to his rule, orchestrated a systematic campaign of murder. His mind, twisted by fear and ambition, saw enemies in every shadow and threats in every whisper. He believed that only through ruthless elimination could he secure his power and control over the survivors. Over 125 men, women, and children were brutally slain. These were not just numbers, they were lives, each with their own stories, hopes, and dreams, all cut short by the blade of tyranny. The massacre was not a single event, but a series of calculated and cold-blooded killings, each more brutal than the last. Some were clubbed to death, their bodies left to rot under the unforgiving sun. The brutality of their deaths was matched only by the indifference shown to their remains. Left exposed to the elements, their bodies became a grim testament to the savagery that had taken place. Others were forced to dig their own graves, the chilling sound of shovels striking the earth a constant reminder of their impending doom. Each strike of the shovel was a death knell, a harbinger of the fate that awaited them. The act of digging their own graves added a layer of psychological torment to their physical suffering. The cries of the victims echoed across the lagoons, a haunting testament to the depths of human depravity. These cries, filled with pain and despair, lingered in the air long after the violence had ended, a ghostly reminder of the atrocities committed. The islands, once a paradise, had become a charnel house, the air thick with the stench of death and decay. The transformation was complete. What was once a haven of natural beauty had turned into a nightmarish landscape of death. The very air seemed to carry the weight of the countless lives lost. The survivors who remained lived in a constant state of terror, never knowing when the butcher's blade would fall on them. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow cast by the setting sun was a potential threat. They lived each day in fear, their minds haunted by the memories of the horrors they had witnessed. Cornelisz, his sanity unraveling with each passing day, seemed to revel in the carnage. His descent into madness was marked by an increasing delight in the suffering of others. He became a figure of terror, his presence a constant reminder of the violence that had engulfed the island. He surrounded himself with loyal followers, rewarding their loyalty with stolen goods and the perverse pleasure of participating in his reign of terror. These followers, driven by greed and a desire for power, became willing accomplices in his brutal campaign. They too were consumed by the darkness that had taken hold of the island, their humanity eroded by their actions. Under his command, a reign of terror began. Over 125 men, women, and children were slaughtered, some for resistance, others for sport. Those who remained were enslaved or forced to join his growing army of mutineers, but tyranny would not last. Weeks later, Captain Pelseat returned with soldiers. A brutal confrontation ensued, and Cornelisz and his followers were finally captured. Justice was swift. Cornelisz and his men were executed on the very islands where they had committed their atrocities. Yet, the horror of Batavia's shipwreck lingers to this day. Today, the wreck of Batavia lies beneath the waves, a chilling reminder of humanity's darkest impulses. Some say the ghosts of the murdered still haunt the waters. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating journeys into the unknown. Drop your opinions and suggestions in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Let's explore the secrets of the past together.